Hello and welcome to this video lecture for the University of Connecticut's online course, Classics and Ancient Mediterranean Studies 1103, Classical Mythology. I'm Roger Travis, Associate Professor of Classics at the University of Connecticut, and whether you're enrolled in this course or not, I hope you enjoy the lecture and learn something about new ways of looking at classics and at myth. Thanks for watching.
So here we go. The third moment in Book 24 that I want to talk about, which I want to connect with the rest of the Odyssey, and which I think probably reveals more about the meaning of the Odyssey than any other moment, is the moment in the second Nukuya as the suitors pass Agamemnon and Achilles by, when Agamemnon and Achilles are discussing both the war at Troy and its result for Achilles, and Agamemnon's Nostos and its result for Agamemnon, neither of which from the perspective of the Odyssey was at all successful. And they're trying to evaluate what happened to them against what happened to Odysseus. And the way that Agamemnon tries to tell Achilles that Achilles had it much better than Agamemnon did is by telling Achilles about Achilles' burial. And it goes on forever, this amazing description of the greatest funeral that anybody ever had. Here's the end of it, starting at line 71 of Book 24. But after the flame of Hephaestus had consumed you utterly, then at dawn we gathered your white bones, Achilles, together with unmixed wine and unguents. Your mother gave you a golden jar with handles. She said that it was a present from Dionysus and was the work of renowned Hephaestus. In this your white bones are laid away, O shining Achilles, mixed with the bones of the dead Patroclus, son of Menoetius, and apart from those of Antilochus, whom you prized above all the rest of your companions after the death of Patroclus. Around them then we, the chosen host of the Argive spearmen, piled up a grave mound that was both great and perfect, on a jutting promontory there by the wide Hellespont, so that it can be seen afar from out on the water by men now alive and those to be born in the future. Then your mother, asking the gods for the gift of beautiful prizes, set them in the field for the best of the Achaeans. I, in my time, have attended the funerals of many heroes, at those times when, because a king has perished, the young men gird themselves for sport and set up the prizes. But these your heart would have admired beyond any others, such beautiful prizes as were set up by the goddess silver-footed Thetis for your sake. You were very dear to the gods. So even now you have died, you have not lost your name, but always in the sight of all mankind your fame shall be great, Achilles. But what pleasure was there for me when I had wound up the fighting? In my homecoming Zeus devised my dismal destruction, to be killed by the hands of my cursed wife, and Aegisthus. The key to understanding this passage is to understand that Agamemnon is seriously wrong about how good it is to have had a wonderful burial like that. Certainly, if you're going to be dead, then you might as well have had a great burial. You might as well have all the kleos that Achilles has. But we have to see that that is all that Achilles has, and that Odysseus, by killing the suitors and by accomplishing his Nostos, has managed to get both kleos and Nostos. That is, you can have the biggest burial anybody has ever had. You are still going to be just as dead. No matter how far out to sea your big tomb, your big burial mound can be seen. The connection to be made here with one of the symbols of the Odyssey is a little bit cryptic, but is all the more powerful for needing to be uncovered the way we have to uncover it. To make this all come together properly, there's another element in the Odyssey that I need to work up, and that is the advice that Tiresias, remember, the seer of Thebes, whom Odysseus meets in the underworld in what's called the first Nukuya in Book 11. Tiresias gives Odysseus a certain very, very specific piece of advice about how to get rid of Poseidon's anger against him so that he can finally have peace and have a nice homecoming, a nice rest of his life on Ithaca. It's very puzzling, but I'm going to try to explain it by the time we're all done with this. Anyway, we're in Book 11 of the Odyssey at line 119, and this is Tiresias talking to Odysseus. But after you have killed these suitors in your own palace, either by treachery or openly with the sharp bronze, then you must take up your well-shaped oar and go on a journey until you come where there are men living who know nothing of the sea and who eat food that is not mixed with salt, who never have known ships whose cheeks are painted purple, who never have known well-shaped oars which act for ships as wings do. And I will tell you a very clear proof, and you cannot miss it, when as you walk some other wayfarer happens to meet you and says you carry a winnow fan on your bright shoulder, then you must plant your well-shaped oar in the ground and render ceremonious sacrifice to the Lord Poseidon, 1 ram and 1 bull and a mounter of sows, a boar pig, and make your way home again, and render holy hecatombs to the immortal gods who hold the wide heaven, all of them in order. Death will come to you from the sea in some altogether unwarlike way, and it will end you in the ebbing time of a sleek old age. Your people about you will be prosperous. All this is true that I tell you. So to recap, Odysseus takes his oar from his seafaring days, puts it on his shoulder, walks inland as far as necessary for someone to look at him and see the oar and think that the oar is not an oar because the guy has never seen an oar because he lives so far inland, and instead ask Odysseus what he's doing with that winnow fan, or as it's sometimes called, winnowing fan. So what's a winnow fan? A winnow fan is a tool used in part of the ancient agricultural process called winnowing. When you had a bunch of grain that you had taken from stalks of wheat, you would put it on a threshing floor and you would pound it, and this is called threshing, and it also makes a great place for a dance floor, and these were some of the earliest dance floors, as we'll see when we get to Demeter. You would pound it until the grain became separated from the chaff which is the part you don't want in your flour when you're going to make bread. So you would end up with grain and chaff spread across the threshing floor, and then what you would do is you would take something that looked kind of like an oar, but was more of a shovel affair, and you would pick the grain and the chaff up and throw it up in the air, and the chaff would blow away, and the grain would fall into the pile that you were gradually piling up. And then, at the end of the harvest, presumably, you would take your winnowing fan and you would stick it into the top of the pile to show that you were done with that pile. So that's what the random wayfarer means when he says to Odysseus, "What are you doing walking around with that winnowing fan on your shoulder?" But there's much more to unpack here, and I'm going to get to the next step of it by means of a modern comparison, which I'll make in the next segment of this lecture.